Can climate change threaten our national security? Well, there's a new study suggests climate change presents risks and also opportunities for America going forward, especially in the Asia-Pacific region.
Yeah, the Center for Climate and Security says its latest research shows the U.S. is in the midst of rebalancing of foreign policy and national security. It says the region faces instability, growing populations, and rising powers. But the center also found opportunities for the U.S. to form new alliances and plan ahead for the impact of climate change and work with nations in the region to become more resilient.
And this is something President Obama has addressed today during the two-day Asia-Pacific Economic Cooperation Summit that just wrapped up today in the Philippines. Take a listen.
Now, our rebalance to the Asia-Pacific is rooted in our treaty alliances, including with the Philippines. Our enhanced defense cooperation agreement, when implemented, will bring our militaries even closer together. And we're especially committed to ensuring maritime security in the region, including freedom of navigation. During my visit
today in the 4x4, we are taking 4 minutes during the 4 to examine the new study and changing relationship the United States is forging in that region.
Let's say hello now to Francesco Femia, co-founder and director of the Center for Climate and Security, which actually authored the new report. Francesco, thanks for being here with us.
Thanks for having me.
If you can explain to us, just in simple terms, how does climate change actually present a risk and then also an opportunity at the same time?
Well, we have some of the most vulnerable nations in the world in the Asia-Pacific region. So, and those countries are facing population growth, increasing pressure on coastal areas or people living in coastal areas, and also a lot of water stress. For example, you look at a place like Vietnam, and it's heavily dependent on fish stocks that are moving northward. And as those fish stocks move northward, they're moving into contested waters that are contested between China or Vietnam and some of its neighbors and also the United States. So you have a situation where you have this food risk for people in a country because of climate change, because fish are moving northward. You have a potential international security incident happening in the region. And so that's something that is a real risk and the United States has to be looking at.
Francesco, can I just interrupt you there? Can we not grow, or not say we, but the nations there in the Asia-Pacific region, can they not grow their economy and protect the environment at the same time, be on the same page here?
Yeah, I think they can, and I think certain countries are trying to do that. I think the United States can be helpful in that regard, and that's where the opportunity comes for the United States. I think the opportunity here is that if the U.S. is rebalancing to the Asia-Pacific region, if the U.S. wants to compete for influence with China in the region, then I think it would do well to assist countries, particularly its allies, but also prospective allies, in adapting to climatic changes and in doing so in a sustainable way. So it presents an opportunity not just in an environmental sense, but also in the sense of sort of our strategic priorities as a nation.
Well, let's talk a little bit more about that. How does the U.S. take advantage of forming possibly new alliances?
Well, I think the United States, first of all, should remain committed to its existing alliances and support those countries that have been allies for a long time, many of whom are very vulnerable to climatic risks. But for example, with countries where it's had a sort of a more complicated relationship, for example, Vietnam and also Indonesia, it can basically find ways to support their adaptation to climate change, for example, to help them sort of develop new ways of developing food security for themselves. And that can help, engender goodwill with those countries and build new alliances. And I think that's important. We have what's been called co-opetition with China in the region. I think that's healthy, but I think the United States needs to be seen as a player for good in the region, and I think it can do so in a number of ways. And one of those ways is helping countries adapt to the changing climate.
What about the U.S. military involvement in regards to curbing climate change? I want to get your opinion in regards to, do you think the military should be more focused on doing that or preventing, say, a North Korea from having a nuclear weapon at this time?
I think we have to walk and chew gum at the same time. Former Pacific Commander Admiral Locklear talked a lot about how climate change is going to exacerbate a lot of other risks in the region. And so we need to look at North Korea. We need to be worried about North Korea. And we need to be concerned about what China is doing in the South China Sea. But we also have to deal with climate climate risks, which affect a lot of these other security risks. So our military has actually been front and center on this issue, including the current Pacific Commander, Admiral Harris, in talking about how climate change is really sort of stressing the Asia-Pacific region, and the United States military has to be prepared to deal with those stresses and also to play a constructive role in helping nations in the region. So it's not either climate change or deal with North Korea. It's both. We need to deal with all these issues because as a nation, we're essentially a guarantor of international security. And if we want to play a leadership role in the Asia-Pacific region, we're going to have to do everything, basically.
Okay, Francesco Fimia, co-founder and director of the Center for Climate and Security. Thank you for your time today.
Thank you.
Thank you for having me.